it's just you, or what's up, everybody? Sound check. Can you guys hear me?
It's gonna be fun.
'Cause I can hear you.
You guys might have to listen to Rich for a little while till I figure out what's going on here, because I got no. Can you hear me, Rich? Like wave up or nod your head if you can hear me. You can hear me.
Yeah.
I can't hear you. I don't know why.
Is your laptop muted? This is exactly how you want to start.
You just act like I'm not here for a minute. Let me get this figured out. I might have to go get my daughter upstairs. She's a lot better at this little laptop than I am.
Yeah, somebody in the chat, let me know if you can
Talk
hear
about
me.
all the big fish you've been catching.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's just you can't hear me or if they can't hear me, because then that's a different problem. I haven't had this problem before.
I got you now. I got you. I told you I just had the wrong button pressed.
All right.
I'm only on this computer like once a week, and it's only been like, this is the third time me being on this computer. I just had it muted. So we're good now, man.
Awesome.
Sorry about that.
All right, soft rolling start, but now we're going. It's all right. We're letting a few people roll in. We got we're almost to double digits already. This thing is it's off the charts.
Nice.
Yeah. So for those, welcome tonight. As always, I guess this is now my third Wednesday night stream. We're gonna keep this going. So tonight I'm joined by Tin Horse Monty, who is a fellow content creator, YouTuber. We'll talk a lot about him and learn more about him. So while we're getting started, why don't you just, like, we don't even really know each other much. We've exchanged a few messages, a few comments, a couple of DMs, but it's not like we go way back. So why don't you just, I don't know much about you. Why don't you just start in with a little bit?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I sent you my phone number. I'm like, well, we need to at least have each other's phone numbers. I'm a letter carrier for United States Postal Service, and I got to help people out today. That's why I'm running so far behind. We had like 4 people calling sick, so I got in there and I was expecting just a normal 8-hour day, and they had to split up a couple routes, so my 8-hour day turned into like a 10.5-hour day. So basically, I got home about 20 minutes ago, jumped in the shower and ate some chicken nuggets, and came down here and got this all set up. But no, I live in Southeast Missouri, and I do most of my fishing in Missouri, a little bit of Kentucky, and then Southern Illinois. Carbondale is a little bit bigger town that you look on the map, you see Carbondale. I fish a lot of the lakes in that area. So most of the videos you're going to be seeing or that you guys see are from that area. Most of the lakes over there are kind of small. They're 3,000 acres or less. And yeah, and I fished several of the 10 horse motor lakes, and most of those are like 2,000 acres or less. So I mentioned the 10 horse. That's where my name comes in. Montgomery's my last name, so that's where the Monty part comes in. Mm-hmm. And I fish a lot of 10 horsepower limit lakes, and I do a lot of my fishing out of an aluminum boat, and that's kind of coined a 10 boat. So 10 horse is kind of a play on the 10 horsepower, and then the 10, which is an aluminum boat, and then you throw the Monty on the back side of it, and that's kind of how I came up with the name for my channel. Which, by the way, I like your channel name, HellaBass. I got a buddy that moved here from California. He moved from Oakland, California years ago.
Yeah.
And when he moved here, he was like, "Oh, that's hella cool. Oh, that's hella dope. Oh, that's hella bad." And that's the first time I'd ever heard that word. And then I was doing just looking for channels a while back, and I ran across your channel. And I'm like, okay, I know what that word means. I know all about that word. So that's kind of how I stumbled across your stuff. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Awesome. So you said. And thanks, South Georgia. He said a couple guys shouting out saying thanks. They appreciate you still delivering, because that's obviously an important part these days. People are doing a lot more online shopping and a lot more purchases, whether it's Omnia or it's Hacker Your House or another place, and it's nice. That's like the one thing to look forward to if you're stuck at home. It's a new tackle. So you're from Illinois. And you said it's kind of the southern central, or what part of Illinois again? I know you mentioned that, but Illinois, like maybe how far south of Chicago? Like people know where Chicago is.
About 5 hours south of Chicago. Okay. We're right on the Mississippi River. So St. Louis, of course, is a big city in Missouri, and if you just go south right along the Mississippi River for about 100 miles. I'm
Are you close to Quincy?
A little bit south of that, even.
Okay, sure.
Right. So I'm right in between St. Louis and Memphis, basically.
Sure. I think I drove through there on my way to Alabama last year, so right around there.
Interstate 55. I'm right off the Interstate 55.
Sure.
So that's the Missouri side. But just a nice town. About 40,000 people, the town I live in, population. Actually, I live in an even smaller town, but
Sure.
that's the main population, about 40,000. So I grew up in this area, and man, I've talked about leaving so many times. You know how it is when you're young, you always want to move away, and you end up just kind of staying here. You start a family, and you got relatives and friends, and next thing you know, you're here, and you finally just begin to appreciate the area. And the grass is always greener until you move over there, and then the grass is greener on the other side, and eventually you just got to be comfortable with the grass that you're sitting in and water it, and let it grow, and here you are. So that's where I'm at right now.
And you're pretty centrally located. Like, I mean, you can access the southeast. Not too long. I mean, a pretty easy day drive, right? You can get just about anywhere. Pretty good fishing in a day drive if you really want to. So, you get probably very little ice down there. Like, you're right on that borderline where they really get. I'm sure some of the ponds freeze over a little bit, but for the most part, it's open water all year there, right?
That's right, man. Yeah. What you just talked about, I'm about 2 hours from Kentucky Lake, and then I'm about 5 hours from like Gunnersville and Pickwick and that kind of stuff down there in Alabama. But as far as ice, yeah, our winters are pretty mild compared to your winters. Every couple years we'll get ice thick enough that you can actually walk out on it, but it only lasts for a week or two. Most of the time we get that skim ice for a little bit, so you can't really walk out on it and you can't really cast into it. So usually low 40s, high 30s is our water temps around here for the most part.
Which is like even from Northern Illinois, that's a big difference, right? Like if you live in the Chicago area, that's like you can bank on ice every year there. So like that's
yeah, it's kind of interesting where we live at. The geography of this area, we've got the Ozark Mountains, and you'll see a lot of weather systems moving, from west to east. And when they hit the center, exactly. And we're even in a splitting point as well. A lot of that stuff will go about 30 miles south of us or 30 miles north of us, or even up into St. Louis. So we're kind of we got a unique little area right here. It's pretty interesting to watch the jet stream and how it works through this area. What was I going to say? Oh, Minnesota. You're in Minnesota, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
I live just south of the Minneapolis area, so I'm just on the south side of the metro where I live. So southern Minnesota, but still plenty cold. You ever been up here, fished at all?
No, but I'm dying to get up there. I got a buddy that is a guide on Mille Lacs, and he lives in the southern Illinois area, and he's he's dying to get me up there, and I'm dying to go. So I'm kind of starting to put a little money in my sock so I can get up there.
So does he summer up there and guide like during this? Is that what is?
Yeah. He comes down. He lives in this area, and then he goes up. Well, he should have been up there already, but because of the quarantine type stuff that's going on, he's going to get to guide this year. But he's opener through October. That's his guiding season.
Nice. Make some hay.
He does all right, man. Yeah, I want to get there for sure.
Well, that's Mille Lacs is really good, and it's probably not as good as it was a little while ago, but it's still pretty awesome. And the other thing is that there's so many good lakes. In the summertime, when things start to get tough for you, I mean, like right now is probably pretty good fishing still for you. Like things are, but I know I've fished in different places in Indiana and Illinois, and it can get pretty darn tough in the summer and into that's when things like, they stay pretty strong here for the most part. So like when you're in those dog days where things are really tough, that's when you want to go up and visit him, or maybe we can get out or something like that. That'd be pretty cool. There's an endless amount of fishing to do, and a little bit different type of fisheries for sure up here than what I've experienced. But we're gonna dive into some of those similarities and differences because we're gonna talk all about spring fishing. I think we really wanted to cover kind of pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, and kind of talk about some of our experiences, help people here on the chat that maybe are just getting into fishing, or maybe they've struggled in the spring, or maybe they just want to get a little better. Like I say, I always I want to help you catch more bass and suck less. And the whole thing is really, even like Kevin Van Dam, he sucks at fishing if you really think about it. Like, he's like the best in the world, and he wins like 6% of the tournaments he fishes, and probably only catches fish on 1 out of 100 casts a day or something like that. So like, even if you can just up those percentages a little bit, all of us, we can catch a whole lot more fish. So that's where the whole suck less thing comes, because really we're all pretty good at fishing, I guess, but we're all pretty bad at catching when you think about it percentage wise.
Very true. Monty gets the rap of the fish at 10,000 casts, but sometimes it's a bass. I mean, he's right behind him.
Especially in certain parts of the country at certain times of the year, for sure.
Yeah.
The only tournament I ever fished in Illinois was on the Peoria River in August. Or not the Illinois River, out of Peoria. And that was like some of the toughest fishing. I caught one 12-incher in 3 days in a tournament.
I believe it. Yeah.
And I beat like 40 guys.
You just got to catch one a lot of times. Yeah. Yeah, we're right kind of in the middle of the spawn down here.
Sure.
Our spawn kind of starts kicking off around early April, and it goes all the way through. We'll have some late spawners in June, but we're kind of right in the heart of it right now. Everything's kind of going on right now. It's more spawn, post spawn right now. So I'm the shad spawn is kind of starting to kick off a little bit, and then you're going to have your bluegill spawning and stuff. So I'm kind of anxious to get that frog bite going, because that's when that frog bite starts happening, is when the bluegills start getting up there, and the bass are kind of just kind of hanging out in the shallows, getting some free food, payback for all those nest robbers. So you guys are probably, are you early pre-spawn right now or what?
Well, it's interesting, because like, we actually just had a little bit of a cold snap, and if we wouldn't have had a cold snap, our southern lakes would probably be knocking on the door, because I was out Saturday on a lake about 30-40 minutes south of my house, and the water temps were 56 to 57.
Wow.
So like, our lakes aren't real deep, and they have a fair amount of dark bottom, just in general, and they got a lot of small bays. They tend to warm up super fast. Like, once that ice melts, things happen really, really fast. Thanks, South Georgia. So like, it's interesting. You're talking about like April to June, right? Like here, and people don't understand this. In Minnesota, it all goes down in like 2 or 3 weeks. Like, it's really? Because our season is so short, and the ice I think they just, like, when they get their window, they go. There's like a minor wave and a major wave and a couple stragglers, and it's done. Like, it's like the pre-spawn can kind of happen for a while, but like, our ice usually comes off, I would say, on average, first or second week of April. And the fish are usually spawning by mid to late May, and are usually done by the first week in June, at least in the southern half of the state.
Yeah,
it happens that fast. Now up north, some of the bigger lakes up north with deeper water and some of that stuff, and crystal clear stuff, that stuff can lag behind. Up north, there are some lakes where like some of the smallies and stuff will lag and probably maybe spawn into early July. But it's interesting. It's really compact. Like, I fished a little bit down south, and they talked about, like, when I was down in Guntersville in April, there was fish that had been spawning for a month, and there was fish still pulling up, and there was like, I mean, like, the further you go south, and this thing goes true, if you go down to Florida, like, they spawn like 4 to 6 months of the year. Like, it just, they have this huge window, and they just spread out. And I think the further you go north and the more the season's crunched, the faster they cycle it. It's like they the prime window, and they just make it happen. I don't know. I think because they sit so long, they want to come out of it, and it's just like instinctual that it's like, we're on a clock. We gotta go. And I think that's what happens up here. And I'm not a biologist, but that's kind of how I see it. What's up, Brian Holder?
I know. I want to address this one comment. South GA Bass says, THM, did you fill out a 3996? So a 39.96, that's kind of a mailman, inside mailman joke. 39.96 is a form you fill out if you have overtime. So they authorize your overtime. So no, Brian, I did not. I just started working, and I'll deal with that tomorrow. But Florida, I've actually heard that Florida, the water temps get so hot, they wait till they cool down to spawn, which is the opposite of what we normally think of. I thought that was pretty interesting how that works down there.
Same in like South Texas, where my dad winters in or lives in Zapata now, and then summers in Minnesota, like on Falcon. And they have to wait till they get a cold snap to push the water down into the 50s again before they can start that cycle out.
That's really interesting. I mean, it makes total sense, but you always think of it starting cold and going hot, but it's got to go the other way, I guess.
Absolutely. So one interesting thing, you mentioned shad spot. So in your area, even the small lakes, do most of them have shad in them?
Yeah, threadfin and gizzard shad. That's a common forage around here, and of course, bluegill, brim, and stuff. But yep.
So up where I fish mostly, which is Minnesota, Wisconsin, almost none of the lakes have shad in them. No gizzards, no threadfin. We have them we have threadfin in the Mississippi River. So like if we go down to even into like Minneapolis, St. Paul, that going all the way down to La Crosse, all the way down to where you live, Mississippi River has shad, but they're not in the lakes. In our natural lakes, it's mainly bluegills. Some of the lakes have shiners, like gold shiners and things like that. Those are kind of dependent. And then when you go up north, there's like emerald shiners and smelt and tulipy and these other oily fish that are more in these bigger lakes, more like pelagic type forage, rainbow smelt, things like that. But we just don't have shad, which I think is one of the big stumbling blocks when people like start fishing in Minnesota or Wisconsin in these natural lakes and they go down south. Lure selection and what fish do are a lot of driven by their forage. So like you get used to fishing all these bluegill eaters and crawfish eaters, and then you go down south and you want to catch them the same way, and they're shad focused. I find when I go down south, spinner baits work better, crankbaits work better, horizontal baits work better. Up here, it's a lot of jigs and plastics, and we do catch them on crankbaits and things like that, but it's more like bluegill patterns and things like that. They don't react to a horizontal bait up here the way they do down south, or even on the river when we fish. When I fish the river a lot, like BFLs and things like that. So that's a big difference from where we fish to a lot of parts in the country. That's
really interesting. You got gobies. Aren't gobies kind of big up there too in a lot of those lakes?
Mainly the Great Lakes. I'm not aware of. There might be a few lakes in like eastern Wisconsin that are close to the Great Lakes where they might have like gotten in there somehow or transported, but no, for the most part, Minnesota and the main parts of the state, unless you're really close to the Great Lakes, they don't have gobies. So it's
that's for some reason I just thought that gobies were everywhere up there. I knew they were in the Great Lakes and stuff, but
and then a lot of perch too. We have a lot of perch, and the fish will definitely feed on bass, or largies and smallies will feed on perch. Do you have any smallies down where you are?
Yeah, well, we have right in my area. There's a lot of small streams that have the smallmouth in them. I mean, a big one is probably 3 pounds. Occasionally, there's a 4-pounder caught, but you have to go down to Kentucky Lake, which is about 2 hours from my house, and Kentucky Lake, the population smallmouth has really gotten strong there. It's always been around, but it seems like since the Asian carp kind of got in that system, something's happened where the smallmouth have taken off. I don't really understand the correlation between the two, but you're catching a lot of smallmouth.
Or if it's just coincidence, they're on an upswing at this. Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's who knows, right? And I mean, the largemouth are also like on the decline, which could be carp related, could be grass related, could be pressure related, could be high water in the spring. Like there's a lot of things that could be affecting the largemouth. So maybe it's just the smallmouth have flourished a little bit with the non-competition of the largemouth more than the increase of the carp. I don't know, right? I mean, who really knows? But it's good to see it because that's awesome. Like, because they get some big old bigs. Like, I mean, you don't catch a lot of dinks. If you catch a smallmouth in Kentucky, it's usually a jammer. Like they catch quality ones. So that's awesome to see. Like, I would love to, see that become. I mean, obviously they do really well in Pickwick. They do really well in Wilson. So it'd be great to see them start to gain hold in more TVA systems. I mean, they are in Gunnersville, they are in Chickamauga, but they're irrelevant for the most part in those lakes.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting. Well, you pretty much hit it. I think it was a perfect storm of all those different variables as far as the smallmouth kind of filling in that little void there that the largemouth had created. But do you guys have I know we're kind of getting off the topic here, but speaking about Asian carp, do you have an Asian carp problem up that way at all? Is it got up there yet? Or?
I mean, there's been a few found and like some DNA found and a few random fish up in some of the pools up like just south of the cities. There's a pretty big dam with a pretty high like threshold right in like the Minneapolis-St. Paul area that they don't really think they're going to get by. So they're definitely not a problem. Nothing like the Illinois River by any means. So Sycamore does it make sense to have a delayed spawn in a very deep lake if you're in Indiana? I'd say yes. The deeper the lake you are in, you definitely have the potential to have a spread out spawn or delayed spawn, because the surface temp may look like it's really warm, but in those deeper lakes, if them fish are sitting down lower, that water is still cold. So if they winter deeper or they pre-spawn deeper, that cool water will keep them. Even though the pockets may get warm, they're still like their gestation is still has to do with that water temp. So I definitely think that is a possibility that it can definitely be A, delayed, or B, prolonged, because they might spread them out a little bit, and like they might not just all come up like they would in a small, shallow lake. What do you think? You agree with that?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And to kind of piggyback on that, that's why a lot of times you'll see as the spawn later into the spawn, you'll see some of those fish start spawning out deeper because they've got optimum water temps down deeper. Of course, it also depends on the light penetration, but those first spawners, the water's only conducive for that upper 2 foot, let's just say. But as the season goes on, the temperature is warmer farther down into the water column. It allows them to spawn, a little bit deeper. So it's, but yeah, just those pockets are always going to have the first spawners in there, upper river usually, and then in the shallower pockets, and those main lake fish are usually just a little bit behind.
Yeah, I think deeper, cleaner lakes, I think they need a bigger window of consistent weather. Whereas like in a shallow, maybe dirtier lake, they don't need a big window. Like it warms up, they do it. Like in those deeper, cleaner lakes, I think they want that longer, consistent kind of warm weather. I think they can much easier get pushed off with some fronts, kind of what Tom is saying here.
Yeah, that fishing gets when it turns on those muddy lakes like that, man. It's like all of a sudden they're just there and they're biting, and it's nuts for a while, and then everybody figures it out, and everybody's the best fisherman in the world, and then it's kind of done, and then it gets tough again. It's just
yeah,
you gotta get out there when it's going on, or you'll miss it. I'm always working, looking at pictures of people holding up 5 and 6 pounders, and I always get the day where there's a cold front that pushed through or something, and I'm out there just trying to scratch my head and figure what's going on.
It's always raining and blowing on the weekends.
That's what makes us better, though. That's the thing about fishing is this as well as anybody, but it's never the same. Even throughout the course of the day, the conditions are changing. There's so many variables. It's hard to not overthink it. Sometimes you just have to go fishing and not think about it too much. Just kind of let your instincts kick in. But there are so many variables out there, and I know I talked to you a little bit about that. I had a little theory on like the cycle of life and then the seasons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why it's so important to have time on the water. Because the more time you have on the water, the more you put yourself in a specific condition, and the more you become familiar with how the fish react in that specific condition. And it just, you make decisions faster, because after a while, if you fish for a while, it really comes down to decision making. You're proficient at your casting. It's not like you're Gerald Swindle and you got to be able to skip a jig 20 yards under a dock. But if you can get a jig under a dock, you're not throwing up in the trees, your casting's decent, you can flip and pitch and, do all that kind of stuff. After a while, it comes to once you've got the mechanics down, then it becomes a mental game, and it's all about decision making. It's all about not continuing to go through an area that you know is not, you're not feeling it, it's not producing. You know, you can get lazy and just keep going down a bank for a long time. And next thing you know, you've been either going down that bank for an hour with the same presentation, or you're switching up every 5 minutes. You know, an hour later, you're like, I really didn't give anything a chance to produce for me, so I'm lost again. I don't really know what happened, you know. But it becomes a decision. The decision making is where fishing really is, in you know, in my opinion. What do you think about that?
100%. I think both in the macro and in the micro, time on the water is important. I think in the macro, the more time you put on the water over time, like season after season, that prepares you to make better adjustments, react to things, weather, water temperatures, new lakes, grass conditions, wind, like everything you see, like you just start like, oh yeah, like, okay. You just get more in tune with the fish on a macro level, and you see more things, and then you just don't get overwhelmed, I think. And then on a micro level, like the more you fish, like every weekend or a couple times per week, if you can do that through the whole season, you get comfortable with what the fish are doing, and then like you're like, okay, I know they were spawning last weekend. Okay, they're probably still spawning a little bit. Like you can kind of keep on them. You like can follow their movements through the year. That really helps you understand what's going on. If you only go fishing like once every 6 weeks, it's hard to feel that confidence and that rhythm, and like you just feel out of sorts. You're like, oh man, like, oh, you just like start from scratch all the time.
Right.
So I think both on a seasonal micro level and a macro level, the more you can fish, the better you're going to do. I mean, obviously you're going to have some bad days every now and then, but the more you fish, the more you're going to catch them, and that's just all there is to it. It's just, you know, anything, like it's like working out. Like the more you work out, the more you go to the gym, the better your body's going to respond. And then, you know, whether it's running or playing basketball or fishing, and some of it's more on a physical level, and some of it's more, you know, fishing is more of a mental thing. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So just to expand on that one more time, because
I
this
just
is
lost Gabe. I don't hear you.
You don't hear me?
What happened? Did I press the button?
Still there? Can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Can you guys hear Gabe? Because I can't.
I can hear you.
Or did we lose sound on everybody?
I'm still there.
I want to do that. All right, you can. I'm only the one that can't hear him all of a sudden.
Okay. So you can hear me. Oh, DJ says he hears both.
Well, it's really hard for me to have a conversation if I can't hear him. I don't know sign language. That's not going to work for me.
I don't either. I don't know what I said. It's probably bad.
Oh man.
It's kind of like Spanish.
He was literally talking and it just disappeared.
Man, bummer. So Brian says,
this is nuts. Bringing them out and bringing them back in. How about now? Say something.
I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? No? Huh. Interesting. I don't know if I need to be doing anything.
How did that even happen?
I don't know. Maybe we were discussing some secret theory that probably the government cutting us off or something. A lot of strange stuff going on nowadays.
That's not useful.
Sycamore outdoors. I like your comment there. So you still can't hear me? Still can't hear me. DJ, man, DJ Hall asked, since there's audio trouble, what should I throw at Clearwater Saturday? So Clearwater, guys out there, Clearwater is a impoundment that's about 2 hours away from where I'm at. So I guess he's going to go there and do a little fishing. I don't really know. DJ, I haven't fished there ever.
Get Jimmy's headphones and see if that works.
Last I heard, they were biting on a jig off the old bank line because the water was up a little bit. But I've never been there, so I really can't help you on that. Wish I could. Nothing happened there.
Well, I can hear him all of a sudden.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know.
All right, I have no idea what happened. That was crazy.
Yeah, there was
what happens again.
well, and then boom, you were back, or I was back.
I don't know if I touched some buttons or what. All right, so I just realized that I can actually put people's comments on the screens.
Yep.
I just learned something. All right, we only lost 1/3 of our viewers during that time. All right, so where were we?
We were talking about time on the water. What we were talking
time
about.
on the water. Yeah, we were talking about how, like, it's, you know, somebody had a pretty good comment here, actually. This one right here. Sycamore, I'd rather spend 4 hours in the water and not catch a fish than a triple bogey or a par 4. So
Yep.
I'd rather spend 4 hours in the water and not catch a fish than rather get a hole in one, honestly. So,
I'm with you, man.
Yeah, I've golfed a little bit. I go about once every 5 years, whether I need it or not. So,
I do the mini golf.
So
that's about as far as I go on it. I don't know. I mean, my dad took me when I was younger a couple times, but it just
yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my jam. Like I've given up a lot of things to do more fishing because, like, as I've gotten busier with work and family, it's like I stopped playing softball. I've kind of put away with fantasy sports. Just eliminated a lot of those things just to clear up and have more time to go fishing and do more stuff for content creation. And I'd rather spend more time doing things related to fishing than just kind of dilute myself. But everybody else is do what they want to do.
Yeah.
I cleared my muffled sound. I sound better. Well, that's good.
Real quick before we move on, I want to kind of jump back to that topic we were just talking about, because this might be my only opportunity to share this with the folks up there in Minnesota.
This is going to get deep. Prepare yourselves, guys.
Okay, so this is going to start out fairly morbid, but take it mellow, okay? So let's just say we all have 20 years left to live on this earth. Let's just assume everybody out there in YouTube land and myself included. So that's 20 years. There's 4 seasons in each year. So that is 20 opportunities to fish during each one of those seasons, okay? So let's say you only get out on the water.
I should have a whiteboard, like whiteboarding this.
We're going to do some physics and algebra. So let's assume you only fish once a month, okay? Let's assume a season is 3 months, okay? So that is 3 chances you get to fish that season, okay? So you see what I'm getting at with the time on the water. That's why the time on the water is so important. So the more you can get out on the water, the more you can put yourself in each one of those seasons. And life is short. Hopefully it's 75 years for everybody out there. But the bottom line is, the more you can go, the more you can put yourself in those different situations, and the better you become. So I just been kind of thinking about that the last couple of years, and it kind of puts it into perspective about how, time on the water is just as important as anything else out there, or with family or whatever it is that you do, but if you're going to become a better fisherman, that's just kind of, if you're only going out, and kind of like what you just said about, if you only go every 6 weeks, you're kind of lost when you go out there. But if you're able to go, if you're able to go a couple times a week, you can just kind of pick up right where you left off. You can jump, you can just kind of stack all those trips together and put a pattern together a whole lot quicker. So
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like the people that only go fishing once a year for a week at a cabin. It's like, that's got to be tough. Like, I'm sure, like, you're going up there to be outdoors and enjoy nature, and you're probably, if you only go fishing once a year, you're probably more about just getting outside and roasting marshmallows and hanging out by the lake than you really are. But like, so absolutely. Sycamore Does wants to know, his wife wants to know if my hair comes with the visor. And it's not attached, but this quarantine flow is getting to be a real thing right now. Like,
yeah.
I'm this close to letting my 9-year-old cut my hair. So,
yeah. Well, we had to do that the other day. My wife went out in the yard, and I set her out in the yard, and she just took some clippers out and just buzzed my head and my My kids kind of my goatee. I mean, knocked about 1.5 inches off my goatee, and I got to hit these sideburns though. They're getting kind of scrappy. It's kind of like my.
I kind of go with this all year. It gets a little bushier and longer in the winter, and then I just kind of keep it a little tighter in the summer. But
yeah,
I kind of like a visor, and then the hood and the beard. I don't have a lot, and then sunglasses. Like I don't have a lot to protect sun. I kind of like that. So,
so like a light filter. Dude, it just kind of filters the light and doesn't let it get into your eyes from the bottom.
You can see some things.
Or man,
Gary says we need to retire so we can fish every day. Well, Gary, we need you to sub and watch all our videos a whole bunch and share them with your friends so that we can just make content and fish rather than give up our day jobs. We're a little ways away from that, but you can help us, Gary, achieve our goal. Or at least make a boat payment. That'd be nice if I could just get the channel to pay for my hobby a little bit more.
Saw Greg on there.
Does that look like? Well, if I had my sunglasses, I probably really would look like the Unabomber with my hoodie on.
Yeah, I'm a mailman.
This is what I look like when I fish. Like sunglasses, hood up, everything all shielded. Like you can see grass pockets, stumps, rocks, fish. So maybe talk about. Yeah, go ahead, sure. Go.
You have the coronavirus mask in there too. I mean, there would be no whatsoever.
I used to wear a buff. I used to wear a buff a lot, but now that I've gotten used to wearing hoods, I feel like the buff is not needed. But
yeah,
I use my buff to go grocery shopping now, which is weird.
Right.
Your buddy BYB wants you to explain your bed drop shot.
Oh man, no, we're not talking about that again. That's kind of a running joke, and I'll get a hold of you later, Greg.
So is this a sore point and not a hot technique of yours, or?
No, it's just okay. We were doing a live stream a couple weeks ago,
Sure.
And I was talking about bed fishing with a certain technique, and I was being completely focused on the topic, and his mind was in the gutter, and he splintered around, and so now it's kind of a running joke. So
a little bit of an innuendo of sorts.
Yeah, we're gonna just kind of leave it there.
So let's maybe just let's rewind back a little bit. So like in Minnesota, we're still mostly pre-spawn. There could be fish probably definitely we're gonna have a little warm spell like in the next week to 10 days. I bet you fish are gonna start spawning here pretty good in the southern part of Minnesota. So let's talk. And our season just opened Saturday. So we have seasons. So let's throw that out the window because that sucks. But let's think pre-spawn. What are your baits and what are you looking for? Like you said, your pre-spawn starts in April, right?
Well, really,
I
mean, not May. I'm sorry, March.
March. Okay.
Yeah, really March. And that's kind of a jerkbait deal for us down here.
And I guess maybe what to you where you live, what do you define when winter stops and pre-spawn starts? Maybe start there.
Well, it's got to do with the length of the days. Usually, that's kind of a gray area, but you'll start to see the water temps moving up into the mid 40s and the upper 40s, and you kind of just see the fish becoming a little more active. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll catch some fish a little shallower. You can start moving the jerkbait just a little bit faster. It's a real gradual process. But usually when that water gets in the mid 40s, probably 46, 47, 48, that's when I'm kind of getting excited because I know the fish are going to start slowly making their way to, the staging areas and stuff.
So that's where you're maybe instead of just focusing on main lake stuff, right? You're starting to look at secondary points and things at least aiming towards backs of pockets. I mean, right? The fish are starting to move, even though they may still be deep, they're starting to move and transition towards where they want to be.
Right. Yeah. And you'll have better days, you'll catch a few more extra fish. Cause a lot of times in the winter around here, it's hard to just catch a couple fish some days. I mean, it can get really, really tough, but all of a sudden you'll have that day where you're catching, 5 or 6 or 7 fish. It seems like they're getting a little more active. And then they're of course, when you catch one that's really fat, they're gorging up and they're starting to, their eggs are starting to happen. But yeah, that's basically what you said. We have a lot of grass lakes around here too, and a lot of those fish will actually stay or relate to the grass throughout the whole winter. They won't move. They don't make the movements like a traditional like Highland impoundment lake or something,
Right.
where they really get out deep and they have wintering areas. So a lot of these fish are they don't have to swim very far at all to be where they need to be. They may migrate 200 yards to go from their wintering spots to their actual spawning spot. So
Right.
they're going to be in that area, but they're going to be basically just their metabolism. You can kind of tell that they're a little more. They're feeding up a little bit. You're catching more fish a day, and you can tell that they're starting to get a little fatter, more healthier.
Sure. Starting to get a little color.
A little
Not so
color.
white.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So quick question before Sycamore says, do you think bottom color of a boat is important in clear water? Should I paint it baby blue to match the sky? I don't think that's necessary. I think as long as you avoid bright colors, like I definitely wouldn't want like a bright red, or I wouldn't want a neon green bottom of my boat. I think as long as it's kind of flat and dark. I mean, I know there was some guys for a while that wanted to put metal flake. I knew a guy that was like, he thought if he had metal flake on the bottom instead of like a gray, right, in that, or a white, that reflection would like be like minnows. It would actually like attract bait fish. And so, I mean, it's all upstairs, I think, honestly. But I probably would. I mean, if you're in super clear water and you do a lot of shallow or sight fishing, or the fish are very visual, I think you probably don't want super bright colors below your rub rail. But I don't think you need to do anything special. I mean, they're going to know you're there. They can feel you. So, but if you're in a boat, you're moving water and they can feel you. So I wouldn't get too caught up on the color.
So if you had the hydro wave going and you had the sparkle fleck on the bottom of your boat, bass could
Maybe
literally hit the bottom of your boat.
Maybe. The Northerns would for sure. They're dumber than a box of rocks.
Yeah, I agree with boat color.
So in Minnesota, it's interesting because we have ice until usually, I mean, most of the time, late March, early April to mid-April is when the ice comes out, at least in the southern part of the state. Sometimes in northern Minnesota, our opener fishing season is like this last week, and Mother's Day Saturday, and sometimes they are still waiting for the ice to break off the lakes up there. So there's an interesting phenomenon here, at least what I've observed, is that within that first week of ice out, when we get some warm water, a good chunk of the fish go super shallow, like into boat caves, into shallow reed, kind of cattail, like muddy bottom bays. The bluegills go in there, the crappies go in there, the bass go in there, the pike go in there. Everything goes up to like feed on like that fresh activity, like that warm water, the snow melting in through and like the bugs and I don't know. There's all just a big life like happens. They all go up, they feed for a little bit, and then they kind of pull back like out to the weed edges again. Like you like go up, and then it's like, okay, we're gonna go back and set up again. It's kind of interesting. And then that lasts probably, I don't know, a month to 6 weeks of kind of pre-spawn, where they're gonna hang out on those edges and they're gonna move up into the flats. They're gonna move into the bays, but they're gonna stay like not up where they're gonna spawn, but they'll drop back into the weed flats. Is where I kind of caught my fish this week, because they were not up in the shallow 1 to 2 feet pad stems and hard cover for the most part. They probably were up there, and then they probably pulled back again. They were kind of went up, they looked around, then they came back with the cold front. And so I think the guys that did the best this weekend, which I would have wished, they were probably more in like 6 to 10 feet, fishing what was left of a weed line adjacent to those kind of spawning bays. Yeah, we did okay on reaction baits, swim jigs, and chatterbaits in that like 3 to 4 foot, 2 to 4 foot zone. But I think we could have caught more consistent and bigger fish had we dropped out and maybe drug a jig in like 6. In the lake I was in, probably like 5 to 8 feet. In some of the other lakes, a little cleaner, maybe like 8 to 12. So,
yeah, that makes sense. It's hard to do that though when you're on the opener. You're ready to go. You're ready to rock and roll.
You just want to go up there and just crash into them up shallow and just like and knock their heads in. But it didn't quite happen.
Yeah, we're usually on the fish. We're our bodies are nice and toasty and stuff, and they're kind of still cold. So we're usually fired up and ready to go, and they're just kind of waking up sometimes. And
that goes back to that. Like, had I been fishing more, I probably would have known they weren't going to be up there. Like I would have been prepared and been more like, I could have went up and like, okay, it's not quite, probably would have adjusted much quicker.
Right. Yeah, I see Backyard Bassin in there said something about spinnerbaits with Colorado blades. That's another bait that I use a lot in the early pre-spawn, because like I said, we got a lot of grass in those. Like when the water's really stained in our area and probably throughout the country, you got foot of visibility or left, that jerkbait bite, it doesn't totally go away, but bottom line, it's easier for me to get a reaction bite in when that water temperature is like 42, 43 on a big Colorado blade, kind of slow, big Colorado blade spinnerbait, kind of slow rolling through that grass and stuff. So that's, I just saw that comment from Backyard Bassin, and that kind of bring that up. That's one of my confidence baits in the late winter, early spring, in that stained water.
I definitely know guys that really like it on the Mississippi River where we get the mud. I think as most of our lakes are so clear that that big thumping, like it's a swim jig and a bladed jig most of the time. For me, early, like a swim jig, and then once it warms up, then I like that bladed jig. It all depends on the day. Like if it's super glass calm and like I'll throw a swim jig. If we get a little wind like I had last weekend, then it seemed like the bladed jig was a little better. So
that Colorado blade goes away when the water starts getting about 1.5 foot visibility. If you don't have any wind and overcast, it just gets tougher and tougher. I mean, it's golden when the conditions are right. It's a really specific technique to certain conditions.
Big hubcap Colorado.
Yeah. I like a size 8. That's the boat I like to throw. It puts off a lot of water. They can feel it for sure. Pick it up.
Almost like it's like the original chatterbait, almost like before chatterbaits were chatterbaits, the old single Colorado.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They still.
Do you like a trailer on that, or do you throw it just the skirt, or?
No, I throw a big swim bait on there.
Okay, like a paddle tail.
Yeah, exactly. That Berkeley grass pig is kind of a stiffer swim bait. Doesn't have a lot of action. It's got a really big profile. And I like the living rubber on the skirt too, the round rubber. I think it makes a difference. Hard to find, so I actually bought some skirt material and tied it up myself, which is a pain in the butt because that stuff, you can't just pop it, like a traditional skirt and it splits up. You got to actually manually peel. There you go.
Something like this. This is the Gambler Easy Swimmer.
Yeah,
pretty similar to the grass pig. I'm pretty sure this is what Berkeley was going for when they came out with the grass pig, was knocking off this Florida style easy swimmer swim bait. So
yep, real similar. Give it a little bit of lift so you can slow it down even more. Because I'm usually got if I'm running like a number 6 or number 7 Colorado blade, I like a 3/4 ounce head on it. If I'm going up to that 8, I need a 1 ounce to keep it down. And that swim bait, it gives it just enough lift. You can really slow it down, and you got that big old nasty profile. You don't catch a lot of fish, but your quality is a whole lot better. Most of your fish are 3 to 6 pounds that you get.
And I think, to me, when I hear you doing that, because you have gizzard shad, I think that's imitating a big rogue gizzard shad, which to a big fish is like an easy meal. And it's like, I'm cold, but I'm getting ready to spawn, so I need to eat. And it's like I could chase a bunch of these little thread fins and bluegills around, but if I can eat one of them 8-inch, 9-inch gizzard shads, that'll get me through. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. If I'm getting off the couch to walk to the refrigerator, I'm gonna grab a steak. I'm not gonna grab like blueberries.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that's one of the things that I think drives a lot of the bait differences. Why you see like spinnerbaits and things like that work. And I think that's why, not that buzz baits don't work up here, but why buzz baits can be so deadly at different times of the year down there. I think it just, those lakes that have gizzard shads, I think it creates a different response and instinct than those big bass. They like that. And I think certain baits provoke that. So 100%.
Bet on that.
So we roll in, let's actually kind of like, we're talking about early pre-spawn and then getting into like the immediate pre-spawn. What kind of things do you like to switch up to then, or what are you looking for where you are?
Well, a lot of times I'll start throwing that crankbait around. I'll start throwing like a DT10, DT6, or like a rock crawler, wiggle wart, a flat-sided crankbait, like a shad wrap or something like that, when that water starts getting, about the same time, right? The jerk bait and all that stuff kind of start playing about the same time. Usually depends on the water clarity, of course, but those fish are going to start staging up a little bit more. They're going to be, a lot of times they're going to be using the lead-in banks. Say you got a big bay or something. I'm kind of thinking of Kentucky Lake here is what's coming to my mind. They'll move off of more of the main creek channel or river channel stuff, and they'll go on these lead-in banks, and then they'll start stopping on these secondary points, moving back. But I'm going to be targeting those with a crankbait a lot of times, like the crankbait, and of course an Alabama rig. I hate to say it, but gosh, I don't fish that much, but I do fish it in the wintertime, and it catches a lot of fish. Seems like if they won't hit like an underspin or a small swim bait or jerk bait, that Alabama rig is clutch, and you can use that to just kind of find fish. But the lead-in banks, secondary points and stuff like that coming in, what I'm kind of starting to look for. You might get a jig bite every once in a while, and that's kind of strange around here. We usually get a winter jig bite. Yep.
Just I like show that to Bill. I love the DT6 parrot too, Bill.
And it's a good crankbait. It's a good solid crankbait. I like the shad wraps.
I'm not interrupting you. Yeah, shad wraps in the spring are really good, especially. That's a super underrated cold water crankbait is the shad wrap.
Mm-hmm. It really is. It really is. It catches a lot of fish, and you don't have to be on the bottom with that. That catches suspenders really well. I kind of been figuring that out the last several years. I catch just as many fish just coming along outside of the grass line. They just come out and suck it in, or you're coming right above them.
It's not a fish. It's not a crankbait. You have to hit bottom to catch them for sure. Which is like a lot of crankbaits. You want to be hitting bottom, but a shad wrap like this one was like a number 7 maybe or whatever this is. I'm not sure what this is, but like that little flat-sided, super subtle. Like you want a pretty light baitcaster. I mean, a lot of guys even throw them on spinning rods, but it is not easy to throw. It throws like a potato chip.
And they make other versions of that. They make like the frenzy shad and the lucky shad. They're similar, but there you go. That's a yellow perch color, huh?
Yeah, perch right here can be good.
Yeah, I throw it on a spinning rod. I just throw it on the same thing I would drop shot on, like a 6'8" medium light. Kind of what I go through. I'll be throwing like probably 15-pound braid with a 7-pound fluoro leader. I mean, not 7 foot, 10-pound fluoro leader, 8-pound fluoro leader, something like that.
I got this promotional Mountain Dew colored one.
That's pretty crazy, dude. Wow.
I don't think I've ever thrown it, but I have a Dobbins 684 crankbait rod that I'll throw like flat sides on and shad wraps and things like that with a kind of size 50 reel that throws light baits pretty well, and I'll throw really small jerk baits on that. So yeah, up here, like I said, it happens pretty quickly. So that window of like jerk bait is like what I like here. I would say the pre-spawn, like up to about 50. Like upper 40s to low 50s is what I would use a jerk bait here, and fishing more kind of 4 to 10 foot type water. And sometimes that goes by really quick here, like on our lakes. Like it can just like you miss a weekend of fishing, you might have missed the pre-spawn. Like it just happens like nothing. And then for me, I would say on some of the lakes that have a little bit deeper wood, that can be good, kind of early pre-spawn. Like they'll get up and kind of stage on some of that. And then a lot of our lakes, when it gets to be the pre-spawn, they're going to get they'll get up in like any like a piece of wood in a shallow bay or old pad roots or old pad stems. Like they'll just kind of like get up there, like just before they're going to go, the docks going into the mouths of bays and things like that. That's all stuff. And then, swim jigs, chatterbaits, soft plastics. It's kind of it's pretty basic deal up here, I think, for the pre-spawn, the window that it happens.
Yeah, that's basically, I see Bill's comment there about the jackhammer and the Little Dipper.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. I'll be throwing that same thing once that water gets in the low 50s. That's when I'm going to pick in a black and blue swim jig. I had a lot of good days this year last couple of months with that black and blue swim jig. That white jackhammer, 1/2 ounce jackhammer with the little dipper on there, the white trash color, or even the white with the blue pearl top on it. Just I'll put a little bit of chartreuse on the tail and just go to work. If you know they're up there and they're on that wood like you're talking about, they're really getting on the hard cover. That's a great way to catch them. But I need that water to be, for me mentally, it needs to be up in the low 50s before I feel that I'm going to catch them, using the moving baits, covering a lot of water. But
yeah, 100%, especially for a largemouth. There's something about 50 or 52
right
that like changes things big time for them. Like there's a big difference between upper 40s and low 50s for a largemouth, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
and
that's a big, like you can still catch them, but that goes from like you go from jerk baits and shad wraps and that kind of stuff, or maybe a slow moving spinner bait. And then when it goes into that low 50, I think that's when it's like lipless, fast moving shatter baits, like the quicker spinner baits, right? I mean, I guess.
Right. All that stuff starts coming into play. It's like you said, it's a whole new group of tools on your deck. It's just kind of, you can even throw a frog in there every once in a while. I'll catch a few fish. 52, 53 on a frog. It's not consistent, but every once in a while, if the sun's out and it just looks right, you can sneak one off a flat or something with a frog. Yeah, man, that's kind of where, our water temps are like 64, 65 right now. They've been kind of holding in that time frame for quite a while. It just kind of stalled out. We've been having some warm, sunny days. We'll have a little stretch of the 2 or 3, 4, sunny bluebird skies, and then we'll have these fronts push through. Like the last couple of days, it's been raining. We've had cold rain. It's been in the 50s. So that water's starting to come up, and then it just stalls. So we're just kind of holding right there in that pattern. It's been going on for a month or so.
Yeah, and actually, he mentioned that that's exactly, if you watch the video, and I actually showed where like I wasn't catching much, and then I put a skinny dipper on the back of my bladed jig, and I trimmed that paddle tail off, so it was just, and then I instantly caught like 7 or 8 fish to Bill's 0. So I don't know what it was, but that definitely. Sycamore says, yeah, his Summer Lake property, bluegills, crappies, perch, crayfish, 100%. Know the forage on your lake. That drives bait decisions and what fish are doing more than. Don't get too caught up on what the pros are doing in Alabama or Arkansas. If you live way up on National North Lake where there's no shad like that, you can still learn things, but don't get hung up on that exact bait and that exact color, because it could be a great bait, but you might need a slightly different color or a slightly different retrieve or different time of the year. So that's all about being in tune with your lakes.
Right.
Bill says, don't sleep on the 6th Sense brown eye. I don't have the brown eye, but I did catch some pretty good fish on. I have it here. Maybe I put it in my tackle box and then it caught them. I don't know what I did with mine. But yeah, I got a chartreuse shad one that I did pretty well on. Oh, right here. Yeah, this one. Like I've only thrown this one time really, and I caught quite a few smallies. I caught some walleyes. I caught some northerns. Yeah, this is a bait that I definitely want to throw some more of.
Yeah, I'm kind of somewhat new to the 6th Sense stuff. Last couple of years, I mean, I bought some of the Cloud 20s, the deeper diver crankbait, and then I've got some of the Provoke jerk baits. I caught some fish on those. But
I want to try those. I haven't tried those yet. But
yeah, they cast really well. They've got a little bit different action, but I tend to find something that I like. I don't vary too far away from it, because next thing you know, I got like what you got behind you.
Yeah, like you said, like there's only so much room in a boat. So
right.
I will say that Bill said, turn that dipper upside down, which is a good option, but also just trimming it off flat like that. Especially if you're like, let's say you got a pocket where you've been catching them, change it up. Try trimming that tail off, and you might give them a little bit different vibration, a little bit different, or you're fishing with a guy. Get something to experiment with that definitely changes the action of the bait and produce more fish. So,
yeah, and you can do the same with the chatterbait versus the swim jig. Obviously, sometimes you're catching that same.
I don't trim. I guess I haven't tried trimming a paddle tail off a swim jig, because I feel like that's an essential part of getting that action. But not saying it wouldn't work, but it definitely would be like really subtle then to trim the paddle tail off a swim jig.
Right. Well, what I meant was if you're going through an area with a chatterbait and you quit getting bites,
sure. Yeah.
Swim jig, you know, it's the same kind of targeting, but it's a little more finessey approach.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, and especially just because you were catching them on a bladed jig in the morning or last weekend, or if it like slicks off or gets super bright, definitely consider the swim jig. Like if you got clouds and wind or sun and a decent amount of wind, the chatterbait usually keeps going. But if you start to lose and it gets calm and slick, that swim jig will usually outproduce that bladed jig, especially if you have any kind of like water clarity.
Right. Agree with that 100%.
My fish had bright orange crawfish in their throats, so the brown eye worked awesome. Yeah, I mean that's the same thing. Pay attention to what's happening, like especially if you're in a tournament or you ever put fish in your live well and you start seeing them like regurgitate things. Pay attention, right? Like if you're reeling in fish and they got shad tails or perch tails or bluegill tails sticking out of their throat, that's a sign.
Pretty different. Yeah. It's the same way with if you're fishing a jig on the bottom and you're reeling it in and one's following it. That right there can be a big clue. I've unfortunately not paid attention to that enough. Just an obvious thing that happens and you ignore it because you just want to pitch. You know, you're just locked on that pitching. But there's been many times where if you make that change, you're going to start catching a lot more fish.
Yeah, 100%. Like if you're fishing docks or laydowns and you're starting to see fish swim out after your bait when you reel it in, try swimming it. Try throwing a chatterbait down that log. Try throwing a square bill. Like or maybe like, and it could be that they want something horizontal. It could also mean they want a different color, right? Like if you're flipping a black and blue, try swimming that black and blue. If that doesn't produce anything, maybe try a green pumpkin or something like that. So, or a white or something like that.
It's hard to decipher if the fish was actually following your bait, but just wasn't committed. And when you reeled it up off the bottom, he swam after it just as it had an
right.
Or if that fish is suspended and you're reeling it in and you come by his face and he's chasing it. So that's the little piece that you got to put together. But you can figure that out pretty quick. If you start just swimming that jig and you start getting that same result, you'll know that that's what you need to be doing.
Yeah, well, here in Minnesota, you can usually see right by the boat, so you can tell whether they came up or whether they came under the dock or whatever. So,
yeah.
So like, let's talk about getting into the spawn. We're an hour in. I usually like to keep these about 90 minutes. That's not like a hard fast rule. But so what do you like? I mean, can you see a lot of the fish, or is your water clarity such that you end up just blind fishing for beds? What is it like where you are?
It's a lot of just blind fishing. This is the first year. And I mentioned this in a video that I processed it last night. I'm here probably Saturday or something, but I'm talking about being on this local lake, and it's the first time in 3 years where I've actually been able to see some fish on bed. Normally the water is high and it's a foot to a foot and a half visibility, and you've got grass mixed in there too, so you really don't see those fish. So if you're not going to be, if they're not going to be hitting the moving baits like we talked about earlier, I'm dragging something, a jig, a tube, a baby brush hog, a Cinco, that kind of stuff. And you're just kind of, you're in high percentage areas, but you're basically kind of fan casting, or you're pitching to laydowns and stuff, places where they'll be set up with a bed underneath. They like something over their head, if at all possible. They feel a lot more secure underneath there. So isolated targets, but if I'm fishing like this, an expansive weed area, I'm going to be throwing one of those 4 plastic baits, and that's really what I key on. If a front's coming through and I think I can get them to come up off the bed and hit a chatterbait or a spinnerbait or swim jig or something, then I'm certainly going to be doing that. But on those days when it's kind of bluebird skies and they're not really committing, I'm just going to be fan casting, dragging stuff through their beds.
Sure. So 2 things that makes me think of, like, one, a lot of times you can use that spinnerbait, chatterbait, swim jig, and they may not commit to it, but they may come up and bump it or roll on it or help you understand. And that's when okay, now I need to slow down in those areas where I had those bites, right? Or maybe you go through there quick and you catch a couple and you go, you know what, there's probably a whole lot more here. Then you go back through and dead stick a Senko or drag something through there, or a shaky head, or whatever. I mean, I think it's more about what do you have confidence on, and something that you're confident in fishing slow. And I think the one thing is, like, if you do think they're on laydowns, if you do think they're on pad stems, if you do think they're on, grass clumps or whatever, you need to fish it slower if you think they're in the spawn than you would in the summer. Like, you need to, like, fish it through there like there's a bed, like you can see it. Make repeated casts to the juiciest things, because if they're just guarding, you may need to really slow down or if you go through an area and get a couple bites, don't be afraid to go through there and really mine it with something slow. If the water temp is 63 degrees to 66 degrees, if everything tells you they're spawning and you can't see them, you got to fish like they are spawning, like they're there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. And you got to think about it. Slowing down is so key. It's hard to do, but it is very important in the spawn because, those fish don't want that object on their bed. But if it's just only on their bed for a second and then it's moving on, a lot of times they're just going to let it go by. But if it's sitting there for 3, 4, 5 seconds, and then you're pulling it another couple inches and you're pulling it, the odds of them actually picking that up are greatly increased. But it is hard to fish slow, especially after that pre-spawn mode, because you're used to just whacking them, moving down the bank really, really fast, and your mindset is cover water. You got to completely change and slow down, and it's hard to make that transition. It takes a few trips to make that transition for me personally.
Yeah, and that's where that goes back to that experience, right? Like, if you've been through enough seasons, you're gonna feel that change faster, right? And you're gonna be able to, like, make that adaptation. So
yeah,
nice. So one of the baits I really like when I can't see them, when I know them, is a ring fry, and I'll throw that on like a 4 or 5 odd hook, like a Lake Fork ring fry. And sometimes I'll put a really small, like, weight on there or something, or sometimes not at all. But I like it because it moves water. It's subtle. It's like a Senko, but a little bulkier. And it does a good job imitating a brim, I think, which fish definitely hate when they're on the bed. So that's a bait that I really like in the spring, especially when I'm blind casting. Even when I can see them, it's good too. But, like, it skips. You can get it around stuff. There's a lot of good baits. I mean, obviously, any stickworms are good baits. Wacky rigs are really good that time of year. Something that has, I think, especially where I live and where the fish are fairly shallow, something that falls horizontally, like a stickworm, a really light Carolina rig, like what I call a mojo rig. If your bait can have a little bit more of a flutter or horizontal fall to it, I think sometimes that coming down in a fish's bed zone will trigger them more than just like a tube skirting through there or a baby brush hog. But that's just kind of personal preference.
The wacky rig too, a wacky rig, it's doing exactly what you're talking about. And it's funny you said baby brush hog, but you've been showing all these baits, and I feel like I'm left out here. So I had a couple rods sitting over there, but that is one of my. Now on an 1/8 ounce weight, this has actually got a 1/4 ounce. If I'm fishing shallow, I'll be putting an 1/8 ounce weight with that baby brush hog on there, fishing those beds, and that seems to be getting a lot of bites in my neck of the woods through that shallow grass and stuff. And the tube works too, and the Senko, all the stuff that, of course, you mentioned.
100% baby brush hog is a completely underrated bait. I catch fish on the river. I get fish in natural lakes. I've caught them down south. Just figure out, like, if the water's clean, go with a watermelon green pumpkin. If you got darker water, you can go green pumpkin with lighter flecks or a black blue or a black purple. I mean, like, just match the colors to your conditions, and I think it's bit. Like, the other thing I like a baby brush hog is it's got those little tentacles, and bluegills will come in and mess with it. And a lot of times I think the bass will be like, what's he doing? What's he messing with? Like, I think that can draw attention on a tough bite, or like if there's bluegills swarming his beds and a bluegill's grabbing your, like, and he's like, oh, like, I think things that, look menacing to a bed can be really good. I think it's a nice hybrid that looks like a crayfish, it looks like a lizard, it could be a bluegill, it could be a lot of things. The baby brush hog is just a really, it's got enough mass to look in to make the bass on edge, but it's not so intimidating where they don't feel intimidated to pick it up and get it out of there.
Well, it's been on too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, last several years I've been playing with around with that shake head.
So the last thing, if you're getting bites and you're missing them, like keep throwing in there. Like if your bait's moving off and you're missing them, they're probably like, that's a dead sign they're on a bed. If your bait's swimming off and you're setting hook and missing them, stick with it until you catch that fish. You're going to catch it most of the time.
Or you get that thump. You get that thump real hard and you set the hook and it's air. That's been happening. You know, that's that fish is, I mean, I guess is he letting go of it right then, or he's just slamming it to move it? No, but
or blowing it out. It's hard to say without seeing them, and I definitely have seen that too. Like sometimes you need to there'll be days where you get like that bang, and you just need to let it sit there until it swims off. Like
you do.
Hard to do.
Yeah.
But if it's happening, keep presenting back there. Gary Maynard has had a question about thunderstorms. How do you fish that 65-degree water? Rain should be warm. To me, unless it's like when you say thunderstorms. As long as it's not like a really bad thunderstorm where it's like really blowing, chatterbaits, spinnerbaits, buzzbaits, reaction baits during that time are usually the best bet. I mean, a reaction bait in the water column where you think the fish are. So that could be lipless crankbaits. It could be DT. I mean, however deep you think those fish are, I definitely would fish reaction baits in that situation.
Yeah, and a lot of times look for, if you know an area that has a run in, if you've got steep hillsides and stuff, and there'll be little ditches, little drains and stuff that come in off the hillside, you can seek that kind of stuff, and you're going to have water coming in, and that's washing just particles, little worms, little bugs, whatever. 65 degrees is warm enough to key on that. That'll attract bait fish. They'll get curious, and the bass will come in. I've had a lot of good days in the spring, just kind of running around the lake looking for little drains and run-ins and stuff.
Yeah, and our lakes mostly here, it's got to be some kind of a pipe or a culvert to create that. We don't really have those creek natural drains, being that we don't really have reservoirs. We got more natural lakes, so it's typically got to be a stream. It's got to be a culvert. It's got to be something like that. But that's definitely a good tip. What's up, Kyle? Nice you can make it. You missed a bunch. You're going to have to watch the replay. We're already into the bedding phase. The lizard is good, definitely, Gary. And that's the baby brush hog does a great job of imitating a lizard, a lot of things. Zoom super hog is a good one.
Right.
What's up, white whale? Ultravibe speak worm and speak beavers the last 2 weeks. Yesterday's were the best. And yeah, those are good baits. Like to me, when the fish are right before they spawn through when they spawn, it's really hard to beat soft plastics. I mean, like I love to throw jigs, but the one time a year that I definitely kind of tend to default more to plastics is when I feel like the fish are around the spawn. I feel like it just gets more bites. It's easier to keep that bait in the bed. To me, I mean, maybe it's just a confidence thing, but I feel like soft plastics excel during the spawn more than maybe other times of the year.
Now, I've had times where I was getting a lot of those. You talked about the fish picking it up and moving off the bed, not being able to get a hook into them. I mean, even setting back against them, sometimes that'll be a problem. Obviously, because they don't have the hook part of the bait in their mouth. But I found that sometimes going to a jig, it's got the hook. Sometimes you seem to get the hook in a few more fish for whatever reason. I'll shorten that trailer up. I saw somebody mention the speed crawl. That's a shorter. They don't have near as much to grab a hold of versus say a beaver that's Texas rig. They got a lot more meat they can hold on to. That little, like a 5/16 ounce finesse jig or something with a little speed crawl, or even the smallie beaver or something on the back. They got to get a little bit more of it, and I've had a few days where that made a difference.
Yeah, I think that's probably not necessarily that it was the jig; it's that it's more compact, right? Like, so you could throw a Texas rig speed crawl, you could throw a Texas rig tube, you could throw a smaller profile creature bait, something that doesn't have like a lot of tentacles. So yeah, if you're getting the super hog would be a good one for that. It doesn't have a lot of back end tentacles. It's kind of compact. That's all good stuff. For sure. Let's see, 6-inch softfly swim bait, swim jig or top water, plus a first light, last light for the bigs. Yep. So yeah, spawn. I guess up here we see a lot of the fish. Our water, we're blessed and cursed with clear water. So it means sometimes we can't get away with as many reaction baits and things like that, and big heavy spinner baits. But it does mean that we can see a lot of things, and it does change the thing. So up here, we do get to bed fish a lot. We get to see a lot of fish. We get to try like white baits and swim baits and drop shots and doing all those things and actually like tantalizing the fish, which is a lot of fun. A couple tricks there. I think A white is really good if you can get them to eat it because it helps you see it. If the fish aren't really responding to it, I think a natural color is good. You're going to get more bites on natural color. For me, to close the deal, a drop shot is really a really great tool. Actually, let me grab my. Where's my? I don't have my bed box in the boat yet, but where did I think I have it here. Let me grab it.
So that's because you can leave that bait stationary, you know, your weight sitting in the bed, but yet you can lower, you know, you can put it into your line and cause movement without your bait actually moving on as far as the drop shot.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. You can get it to just kind of, you can pick it up and let it flutter and pick it up. I use a pretty heavy drop, like a 3 ounce or 1/4 ounce for being really shallow water. Yeah, so like a white tube. This is all my white baits. Like I have this white tube with these. This is not the right bag, but little fire red tips that can be good. A baby white rage craw. That's one of those compact, like a small baby rage craw is a good bait to drag if you're getting short strikes. I like these big bite baits, warmouths in different colors. They have some bright bluegill imitations that are good for bed fishing when you can see them. I got a lot of white creatures and rage bugs. This is probably my favorite drop shot bait. Is this little perch colored tube? It's like a little 2-inch tube. I mean, it's pretty small, but it's bright enough that I can see it. But it's got coloration in there that definitely does a good job of imitating a bluegill or a perch or something like that. That definitely would be raiding the nest. And then I'll just put that on a little Nico hook and I'll thread it in there. I don't have one handy, but not just nose hook it, but I'll thread it in so the hook is like coming out right where the tentacles are, so that if they do like try to just like just try to mouth it, you got them. Like, you know, you're putting that hook right behind those tentacles, and that can be really deadly. And this is a good sneaky bait. Other drop shot baits I like, these little. Josh Douglas got me hooked on these a while back. These little Biovex colt tails and colt shads. There's this little bright green color that just glows in the water. The fish don't really like that, and you can see it pretty well. So I got some more warmouths. I got a whole bunch of those. My PB ever down in Amistad came on an 8-inch white Lake Fork lizard. So that's, like I said, I mean, don't forget the lizard. I got a warmouth out of the pack. That's what Big Bite Baits, Dean Rojas talks about those. But that's if there's a lot of bluegills around raiding the nest, this can trigger fish pretty good.
White lizard was good for Dean Rojas too, wasn't it?
The what?
Yeah, white lizard was pretty good for Dean Rojas.
Yeah, I think that's what he caught the record on. This is kind of a sneaky bait. The Demiki Hydra.
Yeah.
Like you can fish that in like a green pumpkin or white, but something about those tails and those tentacles will really float. That can get a fish going, especially smallies. What else sneaky in here? We got some Demiki air craws. I don't really use those, but I got them. Yeah, I got a lot of warmouths. A few other things. Those are kind of my basic things. Sometimes a little paddle tail swim bait. There are some things where I definitely will throw like a bigger creature bait. I will throw a swim bait in there. I will have some bigger baits on the deck to sometimes trigger them and get the, like you're just ignoring what I'm putting in there. Sometimes I got to put a big lizard or a big jig or a big creature or float a swim bait in there. And then they'll be like, all of a sudden their attitude will change. And then you can go back in there with the drop shot or the tube and be like, ding, like real quick. So that's some of my Texas rig and the tube on the drop shot. No, I'm using an exposed hook. I'll show one quick. I'll show you. I don't have a drop shot handy, but let me. And I think one that's something that's new that definitely a lot of people is I think a Ned rig can be really good on a bed. Like that's a type of thing where it's like if they pick it up, they got it right. That's all hooked. That can be, especially for smallies. A Ned rig is deadly. This is not the right box.
By the way, Ron says he loves the plastic back. Ron's the Mille Lacs guy that's going to be coming up there next Sunday. He said he loves the classic bass sweatshirt. So shout out to the classic.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's I fished a few of their derby. So this is basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take like a VMC, can't really see that, a little straight shank Nico hook. And then I'll just thread that on there like this. Get that down in there a little bit. It's hard to get the bend in here, but come on.
Come on, man. You got to be stronger than the food.
Yeah, like so there. I basically want it like that.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I probably didn't get it as deep as I could have there, but you can literally hide that nose in there and then have that hook just sticking out. I would get it back maybe another 1/8 or 1/4 inch there. So it's basically just in front of those tentacles. And then if they grab it, they got it. So,
yeah.
What isn't deadly for a smallie on a bed? You know, that is true. There's a lot of aggressive smallies, but if you've been on Mille Lacs or some other places where they get pressured, they can actually get tough to catch after a while. But these are good. This is good for largies too. A Nico rig can be another good option on a bed if you can see them for sure. That's another underrated one. I think the Tokyo rig. If you don't like fishing light line, I think you can get by with a power shot for some of these things on a bed. Yeah, and a wacky worm, right? Like if they're shallow and there's a lot, especially I think you got to look if there's a lot of bluegills around and pestering the fish, and you see that fish like chasing away bluegills, then I think that's really a key to me to be like either throw something like a warmouth that's a bluegill representation or a wacky rig where it's gonna do this. They're more likely to be like go and chase it, right? And then they're just gonna eat it. Or a drop shot, something that you can keep up in their face. So if they're pushing worm, like whatever it is, if they're chasing baby bullheads or perch or bluegills or whatever it is, getting something up in the water column a lot of times will trigger them. And then some fish like that Texas rig or that shaky head or that whatever right down in the nest, like in the spot. So every fish is a little different. You gotta have 3, 4, 5 good tools in your quiver and then just rotate through them to see what that fish reacts to.
Yeah. Bottom line is you can see it, so you can tell what's going on, which is nice. I'm kind of jealous, man. I've done that, every once in a while, like the Lake of the Ozarks and some there's other lakes where I've been fortunate enough to be there when they're on bed. And I've got to do some fishing, but typically I'm around this area and it's just a kind of fan casting type of deal. You're fishing for spawners, but you're not doing them. So you want to talk a little bit about the post spawn maybe before we get there? Yeah. Because we're kind of around here. We're kind of getting towards that, and that, like we said earlier, that's kind of when your shad spawn and your bluegill spawn, all that stuff's kind of coming into play. And the one thing that happens that I really look forward to is the grass starts matting up a little bit in our area, and then you start getting into that punching deal. I love the punch. It's something I've kind of just really focused on the last couple of years. I try to pick out a new technique every year. This year I think it's going to be deep cranking, but the last couple of years I've been working on punching, and so I'm ready for that to start happening. So those, in the post spawn, you're going to have a group of fish that's going to kind of hang around in the grass, and then you're going to have a group that will typically go offshore a little bit, somewhat. And it depends on the bait. If your water's stained, the shad population will typically stay shallower longer. But if your water is clear, you're going to see that move. Like I said, there's going to be some fish that just stay in the grass, and there's going to be a group that follow the shad out and set up offshore. But I'm usually going to be targeting those shallower fish in the post spawn, because they're all going to be kind of resting up and trying to feed up before they start making their way to their summer areas, summer hangouts. So that's kind of for me, it's like a frog toad punching, and then a swim jig on the outside of the grass line will come into play. But that's that last. It kind of gets kind of tough there for a little bit, and then they start feeding up. You got a really good grass bite going on for several weeks, and then you can go do what you want. You can stay shallow, or you can go chase those offshore fish. So you got some more options there. So what about your neck of the woods? What usually goes on up there?
Oh, Gary said shad or chase spinnerbait. So to me, I'm not a shad spot expert, but that tells me there's a shad spot happening, right?
Shad spawn. Yep. That's a shad thing.
Yeah. Yep. So
and had that happen in the last couple of days too, or last couple of weeks.
So that's a telltale sign that the spawn is close to the end and they're about to be post spawn and the shad are right, because like every year is a little different, right, in the water temps, but that usually tells you that you're going to be that's a visual cue to you that if you're seeing that shad spawn, if you're seeing the shad following your swim jig, following your top water, following your bladed jig spinnerbait, that's the transition's about to happen or it's already happened, right? So
right, yeah, you're right on the right on the end of that spawn, going towards the post spawn right there. Your bait pitcher are doing that. Yeah, and that usually happens. That shad spawn usually happens in low light conditions, low light periods. First hour or so in the morning, on a cloudy day, it'll go longer. If you got steep hill and you got shade on there for a little bit longer, it can last till 9 or 10 in the morning sometimes, underneath docks. I've been seeing the gizzard shad up in the grass the last couple of weeks spawning, which is kind of cool. I'm talking 8 to 10 inch gizzard shad up there, and you think they're brim or bluegill swimming out, but you get a good look at them, you'll see the little black tail shad. So that was happening a couple of weeks ago, and that was kind of my mental trigger that this is starting to transition. This is happening, and once those fish figure out that that's going on, once the bass figure out that the shad are up there doing that, you can have some really good days. It kind of takes them, in my opinion, or from my experience, it takes them just a little bit to figure out that that's going on. But once they figure it out, they start finding out how to hoard those fish, and it can be epic. Your top waters can come into play, your jerk baits, anything that's white will work if you get into the right situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, this is where things definitely start to differ from where I fish. So one, we don't have any shad, so there is no shad spawn. Even on the Mississippi River where there's shad, guys that I know have fished the river their whole life, obviously they spawn there, but there is not like a shad spawn. Like they don't know where it happens or how it happens, or it's not like you're talking about or what they talk about down south. So that's interesting. I really want to get on that sometime because I think that sounds like a ton of fun. But so yeah, for us, the bass spawn, a lot of times the crappies are right in there around that same time. It happens fairly shallow. You definitely see it here visually almost on all of our lakes, except for there's a few that are dirty, but the great majority of lakes, you're going to see them. And then to me, there's a certain amount of fish that get out pretty quick. They'll start getting on those outside weed edges really quick where the green weeds are coming up. There's also a certain amount of fish that like to lag shallow, especially some of the bigger fish. Those big females will tend to lag, and I find it's a good time to throw that ring fry or that jig around pad stem clumps, boat docks that are shallow and weedy, laydowns, isolated cover tend to be able to pick off some really big females that are just recuperating before they make their migration out to that deeper water. And some of them stay shallow all year, but it's kind of typically where our fish spawn in almost all the lakes, there's a lot of grass, especially when we're talking about largemouth, where they can kind of go into the grass clumps, they can kind of find some cover, they can kind of rest, eat a few bluegills, and head out. We do have a bluegill spawn that usually comes in right on the heels, and obviously they spawn in several ways. So fish will definitely stay shallow. We definitely have those fish they'll prey on the bluegills and get the revenge. I'd much, early post spawn, I'd much rather target those bluegill nest raiders than going out deep right away. But you can definitely get out and start fishing jigworms on the weed lines and stuff like that, and drop shots and getting out there really quick. The top water start to play very shortly over the grass flats as well. A swim jig is a good way to cover water in Minnesota post spawn, just to figure out where they are. Then fish, they come up and they'll chase. A bluegill colored swim jig is really good to help you understand where those fish are and help you and track them down. 5 best baits for post spawn. I would say a Nico rig, a weightless ring fry like this, fished around shallow cover, skipped it under boat docks, things like that. A swim jig to cover water. A frog will start to play in that immediate post spawn, especially if they're chasing bluegills. That's a fun way to catch fish that are targeting bluegills, is with a frog. Number 5. Probably just a jig. Just because.
What
about you? What's your 5 post spawn?
I would say the frog, the punch rig, wacky rig. It's hard to say. It's hard to keep it to 5. I like Texas rig. I like that little baby brush hog with an 1/8 ounce weight. Kind of like the wing fry. Kind of serve the same purpose. And then if you're going out deep, I like an underspin. I put a little fluke or a small high-tech, like a. Usually I use the little dipper. Actually, that's my swim bait of choice. But on a light underspin to catch those suspenders that are moving out there, and then on the bottom, a jig. Like a 3/4 ounce football jig or something like that.
Nice. Yeah. That's definitely started. I mean, it's kind of like post spawn. It's kind of an evolution. Like the immediate post spawn, I would say wacky rigs, Nico rigs, that a swim jig, and like a weightless ring fry, something like that, a baby brush hog.
Yeah.
So during the spawn, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. Sycamore says, the male stays on the bed, the female leaves. That short window is what I'm talking about here. That female, to me, and especially where I fish, is going to find the first little drop, the heaviest cover, the shittiest spot within 50 yards of that bed, something pretty close, maybe a little further. But they're going to want to get into heavy cover. Like when they first leave the bed, to me, they're going to get into heavy cover and hang out for a day or two, maybe a week, before they get into their summer routine. And that's where I'm talking about, if you fish slow, weightless, you typically got to be stealthy. That's a good time to throw a glide bait, a frog, something that's looks like a good meal to them, but looks easy enough for them to get where they don't have to exert a ton of energy, but it's a good meal. The wacky rig, those are all good things like that. I think that to get those immediate post-spawn females, they're not going to go far most of the time for a day or two. They need to kind of recuperate, eat something, and then they'll figure out whether they want to go into the pads, if they want to go down this bank, if they want to go out on a point, if they start chasing spot or shad, bluegills, whatever. So that's my thoughts on it. What do you think?
I'm with you on that. You'll catch the bucks, and a lot of times the females are hard to come by there for a little bit. There's a little short period where it's a little bit tough, but I don't think they go far. I really don't. I think they're tucked up in the cover. Like you said, they're gonna go to a little bit deeper water, dry, but they're not gonna be that far away. They're gonna rest up, and then I think they know that those bluegill, they know that there's more food coming shortly a lot of times. And like you said, some of them are gonna move off, and some of them are gonna hang around, and then that's gonna last that can last all the way through the summer for those shallow fish.
That can be a solid month for those ones that are waiting for those bluegills to roll in. Yeah, so I would say look for the heaviest, thickest cover closest to the spawning area,
right,
to the beds, and slow down.
Right.
Don't just throw a spinnerbait by a big weed clump. Drop something in there and let it multiple times. Don't just fish by a weeded up lay down. Get in there and pick it apart.
Right. Yeah, you got to be a little more thorough. You definitely got to be a little more thorough. And those offshore fish, the same way they came in is the way they're going to go out most of the time. They're going to, if you got a flat in the back of a pocket and you got a secondary point and then you got a main lake point, they're going to sit on that secondary point sometimes. So you kind of got to work in reverse, for those offshore fish. And as far as the fish that are going to stay shallow, kind of the same thing. They're going to be on the outside weed edge holding there. You just covered it. And basically what you just said, man, just about being thorough, being patient. But it can get tough though. It can get kind of, the post-spawn blues is a real thing. I've had some days where it gets pretty tough, but there are windows that when they do decide to feed up, I always think of Kentucky Lake. It's a tradition when they go out to the ledges, they make their way out to the main river channel. But there's a period in there where it's pretty tough. They're in transition. They're going to swim. Let's just say they're going to swim 1,000 yards to get to that ledge from their spawning area. There's a period of time where they're in between, and they're hard to find. They're like a ghost fish. But all of a sudden, they get out there, it's game on. If you can find them, they're hungry. They're ready to feed up. They've done what they're mine is focused on feeding up. So if you can locate those schools, you can get right in a hurry and get really, really good. But it just takes a little time for them to get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's like really where getting into that post spawn, depending on where you are and the type of lake and the forage, that's where it starts to get diverse. Like, so like you really got to just start thinking about where do those fish want to go? Where do they want to be? What do they want to be eating? And that's where you really just have to start using your mind on what lake you're fishing to make those good decisions. So,
yeah, definitely. You guys have that mayfly hatch up there too, right?
Yeah, that's definitely, it happens on our bigger bodies of water. And then it's definitely on the river happens a lot. Like,
Okay.
So like Mille Lacs has a big fish fly hatch. And the lakes, the smaller lakes around those big lakes will have it, but it's definitely not all the lakes. It definitely can do some weird things for smallies. That can be a good time to throw those little stupid hair jigs, like those little 16th ounce hair jigs.
Right.
On the river, it can be a good time to really downsize and throw a really small 1/4 ounce popper, really 1/8 ounce buzz baits, things like that.
Yeah. Yes, we don't have actually, we do have a little bit of a mayfly hatch, and I've got to experience that a couple times. But it's nothing as expensive as what you have. We have a lot of dragonflies, though. That's kind of an overlooked pattern. That usually happens late summer. That's when your wacky rig can come in, like a June bug. If you find that the dragonflies in your area are like that dark blue color, which is pretty common. They'll be a light blue, and I don't know my dragonfly species, of course, or anything about them, but I do know what color they are. So if you just take a little 4-inch stickworm wacky rig when that's going on, or like an ultra vibe speedworm Texas rig, weightless, and reel it in. Something about that in my areas will trigger some really good topwater bites when that dragonfly hatch is going on.
Those junior frogs.
Yeah.
If you're seeing those dragonflies, like I think you just did a video about that, but I think that's a good time to bring those back. Is when you see those. Like, yeah, sometimes just like and I would say a wacky rig could be good, and probably like the 4-inch sometimes, right? Like you might want to, or rig it Texas rig. If you're on heavy cover, just rig it Texas rig, and you can almost just like swim it and let it flutter a little bit. And it's like you don't need to fish it super slow. You just need to kind of bring it in, let it drop, and like hit, because they're usually around pads or weeds or like, so you're going to drop it in pockets and things like that. That can be really good.
They like that shape, that pencil shape. Right. The dragonflies, thorax, or whatever it looks like, body. So.
Absolutely. Sneaky good thing, like for sure. I don't think you need to go out and get like those weird dragonfly baits. Like I don't think that's overrated in my book.
Suckered into one of those, like the lunker hunt dragonfly. Actually, on clearance, and I thought, well, I don't know. I haven't taken it out of the pack yet, but I did get suckered into that.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Some guys are tuning in, some guys are rolling out. I appreciate everybody that stopped by. I think we got a few more minutes here to go. Are you good on time still?
Yeah, dude, I'm good.
All right. So yeah, we were just kind of wrapping up the spawn. I guess I want to touch on a little bit. Like I was gonna pop this up. Just on people that maybe aren't familiar with your channel. So, Tin Horse Monty on the old YouTube. I guess maybe like give people a clue on, like, I guess you stream as well. I think you stream on Monday nights. What time and what?
Yeah, I do a stream with Backyard Bassin on Monday night, 7 p.m. So 1 week it'll be on his channel, and then the other next week it'll be on Tin Horse Monty.
Sure. Cool. And then, like, what if you want to summarize, like, what types of videos do you do? We kind of talked about where you are, but like, do you do tournaments? Do you do fun fit? Like, what kind of describe your niche or what you value you bring, I guess, or what's interesting or unique, I guess?
Yeah, I'd say majority of my videos are geared towards somewhat local bodies of water, but also stuff that you can take and use anywhere. So I do a lot of day trips around here, and I'll go and kind of capture my day. And I try to take time, which is hard to do while you're fishing as a YouTuber. But I try to take time to talk about the things that I'm using throughout the day, what I'm kind of looking for, my mindset, how I'm trying to put a pattern together, different scenarios. I just try to teach a little bit, of what I know, which at times isn't much, but I try to share share as much of that information as I can. And then I do some tips and technique stuff. I do some tournaments. I'm fishing the Ozark division of the BFLs this year, and we got one tournament in on Table Rock and one on Lake of the Ozarks, but unfortunately our April and May tournaments were pushed back to September. So I'll have a Truman tournament, another Lake of the Ozarks tournament going on there. And then I fish some local tournament circuits. We'll have some Wednesday nighters coming up here in a couple weeks. I'll be doing that. I got some Bass Club stuff, tournament footage. And then I also have some some John boat stuff on there. I did some John boat modifications to a new boat I bought. So I went.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. So like for people that are like John boat, small boat guys, like I think you got some good videos on there on like maybe how to set it up, how to make a fishing boat into like, or how to get a flat and make it a fishing boat, or like give it those upgrades, those small tweaks to make it a bassin boat, I guess, maybe instead of just a duck boat or a fishing boat.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, try to make a small boat fish like a big boat. I've had aluminum boat for forever. I also got a 520 too, a Ranger 520, but I don't get that out quite as much. That's fixing to change because we're building a house and we're going to be right next to where that's stored. But it's just a lot easier for me to wheel my little aluminum John boat out there and hook it up and take off.
Hey, it catches fish. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
They're awesome though. A lot of guys on the Mississippi River, they have flats and they have their bass boats. So they'll fish all week. They'll practice in their flats and then they bring out their big boats just for the tournaments. We do have the world's best netman has just joined the chat. Sobe's here. So
world's best netman.
Yeah, Sam Sobey. He's a small content creator out of Minnesota. You probably never heard of him. He's kind of a big deal. Yeah, so I think, do you fish those BFLs as a co or a boater? I forget.
I fished as a co. Yeah, I fished the LBL division, which is the Lake and Barkley division, for about 5 years, and I kind of took a break from there because the lake was kind of on a decline, and the rates, the entry fees kept going up, and it kind of got frustrating. Some of the local tournaments I fish as a boater, as out of the front. I'll do some tournaments, but I have intentions of going to the boater side eventually. But that's basically in a nutshell. That's kind of my channel. So I enjoy it. It's fun. It's I don't get to go fishing as much as I like. So when I'm at home reviewing clips and days on the water and doing my editing, it kind of makes me feel like fishing again in a way, in a sense.
Right.
It kind of fills in a little void. So
yeah, 100%. So as you said, like September and October on the Ozark Lakes, like that just screams to me locking a chopper or a plopper and a buzzbait and just like all day, like get your shoulders ready, get in shape, like just it's like
that's a big deal down there on those Ozark Lakes. You always hear about that black buzzbait in November and the whopper plopper and the toad, and of course a jig is always good down there.
That's kind of mercy of what your boater is going to do, but like be prepared to throw topwater all day and just cover banks. Like, that could be a deal.
Yeah. Before we get off here though, great job the other night on your stream with the bait man. Really enjoyed that. And that kind of gave me some insight. I didn't realize that you had a lot of tournament experience over the years. And I didn't realize your knowledge of all those baits and stuff that are sitting behind you. That was pretty impressive, man. I enjoyed that stream. I watched it a time and a half. So good job. And then the stream, what was it, last week, where the bait builder was on there, the guy that made the baits. That was pretty cool too. So
I think those like, I know they're a little expensive, but I think those will catch them where you live.
I was looking at them pretty hard, man.
They look like
how he said he took that big block of resin and he used like what was it?
He's like a CNC machine or something to router them out, basically. Yeah, the two halves, and he's like bonding them together, and so it's really unique. I haven't fished them a ton. Impressed with them so far. So
yeah, good stuff, man. I've enjoyed a lot of your stuff. So just
and
on the back.
one thing about creating content, you definitely don't like get as much time to watch other people. So I've been trying to catch up on some of your stuff as well. Because but I found that like these streams are a good way to like keep a rhythm. Like it's a good way to put out a decent chunk of content and decent amount of watch hours and just kind of do it on the fly without, I mean, you could have good content without editing it for 4 hours, like with having a guest like this. I think it's really good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we're definitely have to grease it. My motor's not working so well, Sobe, so you might have to take mercy on me and let me ride in that Vexus one time. Yeah, if you haven't checked out Sobe's channel, you might want to check that out. He's legit. Like he's a super good dude. He's an all right fisherman. But his videography and editing skills will put ours to shame. So you can definitely learn some things from Sobe. So
good, I'll definitely have a look for sure. I'm always
but yeah, actually, if you want really good, we each did a video. We fished a fun tournament in October together, and we just smoked them. It was a ton of fun, and we both did a video version of that, and it shows you how much better he is at video content creator than I am. But it also shows who got the most fish. So,
yeah.
But yeah, for sure. So I think we're kind of wrapping up. I think we'll probably do more of this. Maybe I'll jump on one of your guys' streams if you'll have me, or down the road we'll pick a different content and have you back on. I mean, we had some good vibes here. Make sure you check out Tin Horse Monty. If you're not subscribed to me already, HellaBass. You can find me on social media at HellaBass and just about anywhere. And I think you have an Instagram. I don't know if you're super active there, but that's at Tin Horse Monty 6. There'll be links down in the description to all that. There already is. And then once this goes live, it'll be in there. So yeah, make sure you check out his. He's got some good content. You definitely can learn some things, especially if you don't live in the northern half of the country. Actually, some of your content will probably be a lot more relevant to people that have shad and some of that stuff. So I think there's a lot of valuable stuff out there too. And I think I kind of say there's an evolution of like fishing channels, and I really feel like I'm here to like teach people how to fish, and I want people to learn stuff. I want to entertain you a little bit, but I also want to teach you a lot. So it may not be quite as flashy as some of the stuff that's out there, and it may not be as outrageous, but I think if you really want to learn fishing, some of these smaller, moderate channels can really help you catch some fish. So
yeah, I agree with that 100%. That's kind of where my mindset is too. I don't hide anything on my channel. If I'm catching on a certain bait, I'll throw it right in front of the lens and show it to you. Talk about why I'm fishing that, which sometimes I feel may hurt me. These bodies of water that I fish are small. A lot of guys won't tell you. They'll tell you they're on lake decks, but I would like somebody that's in my area to know of that lake and be able to go there and maybe duplicate something that I did and have a great day on the water and catch fish, because you can't take this knowledge with you. And just the fact that there's been several times, and I know this has happened with you as well, where somebody will stop me on the water and say, hey, dude, or talk to me in the parking lot, say, hey, dude, I watched that video you did at such and such lake, and I went there and I fished those same kind of areas with similar baits, and I had a great day. Me and my buddy caught fish. And to me, that hits me right there, man, because I'm like, dude, that you couldn't have told me anything better, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to share a little bit of something. And I like these, a lot of the comments are really nice too, because people will share stuff with you too. And we're all kind of sharing, trying to help each other catch more fish and have fun. Life's supposed to be fun. Life's not supposed to be a bunch of secrets and, taking all the accolades for yourself. I think you should really, really share and try to help people catch more fish. So, yep.
Somebody asked for a link to Sobe's channel. SOBI, you can't miss him. He's got 44,000 subs. So I don't know that he really needs a link to his channel, but trust me, you can find him if you search SOBI.
Yeah.
Somebody, DJ wants to know, are you putting up a video of you and Phil?
Yeah, I'm working on that, dude. I got I've got 3 or 4 videos ahead of that one. I'm getting really backed up. It's crazy how if you get a little bit lazy and you just kind of let these clips sit on SD cards, next thing you know, you got 4 or 5 videos sitting there. So that one's like number 4. I finished one last night, and I got another one a little grassy from a tournament over there. and then the Wapapello one will be next. But the guys that are here from my channel, please go check HellaBass out. Give him a watch. It's good stuff. Lots to learn there. And like he just said, speaking about his followers on my channel being south, you can learn a lot from up north too, from the guys that are watching. They're coming here from my channel. So, and we'll definitely have you on our live stream sometime in the near future, man. If you'll.
And I can definitely teach you how to catch northern pike up here. So.
All that, yeah. Yeah. We got chain pickerel around here. The grass pike, we call them grass pike. They're little chain pickerel.
Yes, they're like,
yeah.
They don't get like, I mean, we get pike.
We got muskie too. We do have muskie in some of these lakes down there. We actually got a world-class muskie fishery. It's called Kincaid Lake. It's in southern Illinois. It's got some 48, 50, 52-inch fish in it. So, but yeah, man, we'll have you on definitely. Be great to chat.
Chad says, we'll see how much info we're showing when Derby. Hey, you go watch my tournament recaps last year. I wasn't holding anything back. You can see every single fish catch except for when my batteries died in my GoPro. Like, I'm not afraid of nothing. Like, you can go back and see where I caught all those fish in the state tournaments and all that stuff. They're all there. I do recaps. I'm not hiding anything. So, I mean, like, yeah, like I'm not going to show you. I typically won't launch the practice video until after the tournament. But once the derby's done, it's all coming out. Like I'm not worried about it. Like,
yeah.
So,
well, if you know the lake that the video's on, a lot of times you can find some of those spots.
And like tournament videos are most of the tournaments I'm fishing are bigger tournaments. And so I'm putting the name of the lake. These are like big tournament lakes. Like, so I'm not like, it's not, I mean, a lot of the things I do, I don't typically name the lake, but I'll let you know a little secret. I fill out an Omnia fishing report on all my lakes. So if you want to know where I've been, let me just just show you guys something here. Cool. Where's my? Let's see here. Bear with me. All right. Let me,
I wasn't trying to throw shade on you either by saying that.
No, it's fine. Oh, thanks for joining, Bill. Just a second. Now my true friends are showing up, the ones that want to give me the most grief. Let me moment. I think that's the one I want. All right, now we got yeah, there we go. So Omnia Fishing if you go into my public profile on Omnia Fishing, which there's links in the description, you can see fishing reports from everywhere I've been lately. So if you're wondering what little sneaky lake I'm on, I'll put it here. I won't like blast it out on YouTube, but if low key you want to go in through here and catch them, that's where you'll know where I've been fishing. So there you go. And then you can see the links to the products and things like that I've been catching them on. So there's your sneaky tip. And then for Omnia Fishing, if you guys, they're really cool, up and coming tackle company, and there's links down in my description. If you guys want, you can use the code. I'll put this in the chat right here. That will save you 15% on just about anything they have. So I know Tackle Warehouse isn't running any sales right now because they're so behind. So if you want someplace that you can save a little money, and they have a lot of the bait, most of the stuff you're going to want. They got Zoom, they got Sunline, they got Gummies, they got Strike King, they got a lot of the stuff you're going to jackhammers, things like you want to save 15% on jackhammers. Check out Omnia Fishing and use that code. So
it doesn't want to save 15%.
Yeah, they got free shipping and stuff like that, and they're not backed up, so they're shipping like same day or next day. So like if you live where you live and you ordered something on a Monday, I'm guessing you'll have it on a Wednesday with no shipping. So not a bad option.
I like supporting those smaller, semi-smaller companies. Tackle Warehouse has got plenty of business. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're not gonna die without you. Or if 5 of us go shopping at a new place, Tackle Warehouse will continue on.
Yeah.
And I still shop there. I mean, there's stuff that they got. They have stuff that you can't get anywhere else. And so that's. But Omnia is legit, and they're up and coming, and they're adding stuff all the time. So they're definitely worth taking a shot, taking a look. So But yeah, I think we're creeping on 2 hours. We had almost 30 viewers there, so that's like a new record for me. I don't know what kind of numbers you guys pull on your stream, but this is only like my 3rd stream, so we're climbing. We're not quite Bateman, where he hit like 1,100 viewers the other night, which I was like, that was nuts. But keep tuning in every Wednesday night. Next week, I kind of am targeting a swim bait show. Either a buddy of mine that really likes swim baits, or I might try to have the founder of Dream Smasher Swim Baits come on, talk about his baits as well as talk about swim baits. He knows a lot about glide baits and swim baits in general. So I'm kind of thinking a swim bait show next week. So watch my community tab, watch for announcements on social, Instagram, HellaBass, do a swim bait show next week. So I think that's a tentative plan.
Cool. I'll be watching. I'll be tuning in. If I'm not on the water, I'll definitely be checking it out.
Do you guys have a topic for your Monday night stream next week?
Yeah, man. We usually figure that out the day of.
So. All right. Well, here's what you could go leave a comment and tell them what you wanted to talk about. Just any video and say, talk about this on Monday night.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. We're trying to put a little tournament together. Kind of match fishing style, with Joe Thomas. So we like 2 periods in the front for each angler. 4 periods combined, and it's going to be, well, I thought it was just going to be bragging rights, but come to find out the loser is going to have to wear a pink shirt that has some kind of saying yet to be decided on the back of it, and they're going to have to wear that shirt in their next 2 videos. So that's you
and Backyard? Is that?
Yeah, me and Backyard, yeah. So that's going to go down, I think, not this upcoming Wednesday, like actually next Wednesday. So a week from today, I think, is the date that we set. We're just going to go to a local lake. It's about 150-acre lake around here, and he just blew his motor up, so he's got to fish out of my boat now. He lost the option to fish out of his boat, so we'll be on my 16-foot aluminum boat, duking it out, man. It'll be fun. It'll be a friendly competition, but there's a little bit of sweat on the line.
Yeah, I think that whatever's on the shirt should definitely be like a tribute or an homage to the other person's, like, they're better than me. I wish I'm that person's bass boat jockey. I'm like, I don't know, I'm a good net man or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. We're still trying to come up with that, and like on the live stream last week, we told people to comment on if they've got any ideas, family friendly, of course.
Right.
So we'll see what happens.
And that's just, you're just gonna record that, or is that something you're gonna try to do live? I missed that.
We'll just do a couple videos out of it.
Okay. All right. So you'll each have kind of at least 1 or 2 videos, maybe like a first half, second half, or depending on how good, depends how good the fishing is and how many fish catches there are to stuff in the video, right? Or if one guy just blows the other guy out and like, oh, it's 1 video. Or if it's like, it could be really cool, be like first period, like first 2 periods, second 2 periods. If it's a close back and forth, that could be some good content for sure.
Try to build some drama. Hopefully we're not out there showing the viewers how to tie our favorite knots. It's gonna be fun either way. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, good. This has been awesome. I could always talk fishing for about 2 more hours. But I'm gonna go get my kids tucked in, do some work tonight, and then you can probably do some things tonight. And I appreciate having you on. I think we had a good conversation. People seem to enjoy it. And there'll be all kinds of links down in the description. If there's anything you missed, you can catch the replay. And there will be an audio version of this on my podcast, which will be links down below too. So if you want to listen to this when you're driving or jogging or walking or whatever, and you don't have the time to watch it all, that's a good option as well. Yeah, great, man. I enjoyed it, man. Thanks for having me on there. All right. Thanks, Gab. Everybody have a good night. And as always, I would help you catch more fish and suck less.